Hey, Marc Warnke here. So I wanted to take a second this morning and talk to you about a critical point that came up in kind of a Facebook chat and people debating back and forth, and that's of dam raised over bottle babies. There's two super important factors that have to be acknowledged, and I'm going to speak about the one that I think is most critical in the beginning, and that is what happens when you bottle raise a baby is they assume they are you and you are them. And because of that, you become a part of the herd. They think you're a goat and they think they are a human and they think we're the same species. The debate that's being brought up is that they become, I believe, the two quota. The one negative is that need to be close to you, almost a pain in the butt. You're trying to work in the pasture and you got 5 goats around you. They become needy, and I agree with that. I agree that that's a negative to a bottle raised baby. Sometimes you definitely get that. The other negative that they're trying to present, or that somebody was trying to present, is that there's a risk of aggressiveness. And I haven't found that to be true at all. In fact, I found the opposite. So in my opinion, I don't believe that's as valid of a reason to entertain dam raised over bottle babies. The only reason to entertain, in my opinion, dam raised is because of the health factor. Dam raised babies are super healthy. They grow better. They're better overall on a health level and a growth level, and that's important to a pack goat. So I acknowledge that. But let's talk about the risk versus reward. If that's what we put as the reward, then let's talk about the risk factor in that. And the risk factor in that is that bottle raised babies versus dam raised is the bonding that happens in the backcountry. And there's two huge components that bottle raised by a mile are my choice. Now, I also want to quickly acknowledge I did vote videos early and believed as well that dam raised was a little easier, and it was mainly because I saw the health factors. But now I've paid the price of those dam raised, and this is what I'm going to share with you. Dam raised babies, because they lack the bonding and the imprinting, which are both very critical, what dam raised babies will do is they'll wander further from camp when they're feeding. So you have a little camp, and that camp, while you're in it, is like their home base. Dam raised will have a tendency to be willing to wander further, and that has a lot of risks. I mean, I've literally had dam raised goats. The goats will always follow that goat that's the most independent. So I used to have an independent doe named Raven, and Raven was dam raised, and she would wander the herd. I mean, she would take them 400, 500, 600 yards out of sight, over cliffs. I mean, it became a problem because she was willing to lead my herd so far away from base camp just to feed. I had to be constantly diligent to make sure I was reining them in. They weren't as apt to come in when called. Those sorts of things, because of that independence, that factor alone became extremely risky, where they were vulnerable to predators, but more importantly, vulnerable to being lost. If you lose your string in the backcountry, number one, you just lost your string. Number two, they're super vulnerable to predators. And number three, you're going to hurt our entire community by creating a public event that makes land managers, National Forest, Wild Sheep Foundation, gives them a valid point. If we have somebody's string hanging out with a bunch of wild sheep, this is going to be a nationally publicized event. We cannot have that risk. It's too huge to our community, and I believe doing dam raised babies increases that risk. So I just don't think it's worth it. Lastly, I want to speak to the other point that's more mechanical. In the backcountry, if you are going to push it like I've pushed it, making these goats go off trail in country that's difficult to climb for miles upon miles and days upon days, you are going to push them to their limit. Remember, goats are not an endurance athlete. They're built to run up a rock, stand on top of that rock, and hope that that rock defends them. They're only made to avoid predators through bursts of speed and the agility to climb structure or rocks. These are not endurance athletes. They weren't made for it. They don't have the lung capacity. They don't have that kind of will button inside of them unless they're kind of special. And so we have to overcome that. And they don't like crossing water. They don't like going through brushy country. That's not natural for them. None of those things are natural. And also pushing themselves on that will level, they'll kind of amble along and move naturally through things, but they're not going to go day after day after day after day. This is not a huge endurance athlete, and we're asking them to be. We're asking them to do things they're afraid of and things that are unnatural for them. And the best way to do that is have them be live or die to be next to you. And when you're in the backcountry and you're on mile 16 or you're on mile 7 of a hard climb and you got to now go over an obstacle, a dam raised versus a bottle fed has a better chance that that bottle fed will follow you through that obstacle and do what it takes to cover it, where I've seen dam raised be the ones willing to lay down and go, I ain't going, man. It's just not worth it for me to follow that dude. But a bottle raised that'll live or die to stay on your tail, he'll do whatever it takes. And then you got to also remember that in the herd, they like borrow will from one another. It's actually pretty cool to see it. If you have that one goat that'll just do whatever, those others will like borrow his will to get through that as well, and see that as an example. So again, I can't stress this enough. It is so important, please. And I say this with a ton of respect. There are a lot of breeders that have goats that are having pack goat prospects, but they're not packers. And because they're not packers that have spent thousands of miles and years in the backcountry pushing goats to the limit of what is possible with loads on, they don't have the perspective to understand things like this and the impact unless they see a video like this. So I'm putting this out there to the leaders in the community and to you as goat packers. Please consider the implication. Bottle raised is critically important to make sure that we're doing. And again, it's because the risk reward ratio is out of skew. There's not enough reward to dam raise, in my opinion, and the risk is too high. I do believe we as a community need to embrace it for the single factor alone of that feeding out of camp factor. That's very, very critically important. I know of several strings that were lost this last year. It happens, you guys. You need bottle raised babies. So I hope you find that helpful. Marc Warnke, PackGoats.com.